And this gentleman that we're going to introduce in just a moment, he's going to be talking about his program, what he's doing not only in Knoxville, Tennessee, but things that he's done outside of the city boundaries. Umoja Abdul-Ahad, we go way back, even though we didn't know it, but we actually served together at Ellsworth Air Force Base. I used to guard his house. He was in base housing. He was married. I was single. I carried a 38, wore a white hat and nightstick, and drove around. I was a military police, and our job was to protect any and all people that lived on the base or off base. And Umoja was in base housing. I don't know what his classification was, but I know when I went to Vietnam, I was classified as light infantry. I carried an M60, 38, 45, M79 grenade launcher, all kinds of good stuff. And anyway, after all that time in the military, we were standing in the lobby at the Embassy Suites Hotel in Old Town Alexandria on King Street. And Umoja and I started talking. He was on the board, so was I. And come to find out, we were in the Air Force together and had all those experiences. And we have been close friends, even closer after we both told each other we were veterans. And we have been together. And I'll tell you what, Umoja's a good man. He's been up here a couple of times. He's driven up to meet with me to talk about some of the programs and projects that he wants to do. What has stopped us, like it stopped a lot of people, is COVID. So we couldn't do the things that we wanted to do. But he has a lot of good information to share. And I'd like now to introduce Umoja. You're on, buddy.
Thank you, Ollie.
All right, man.
It's just been a great day. I mean, it was America Recycle Day, and we couldn't probably, fill this day with much more than what we're doing now. A little bit of history in terms of the recycling piece. I've always read a lot of newspapers, and I was reading like the New York Times, the Atlanta Constitution, a couple of 2 or 3 local papers, and I had them pile up around different places. And I also was throwing some in the dumpster. And I saw this PBS special that talked about a garbologist, landfill archaeologist that was looking in the landfill and found a paper that was 50 years old. And because it laid flat and wasn't wrinkled up so it could decompose for the insects to get into it and that kind of thing, it stayed there for 50 years, just laying solid. So at that particular time, I committed myself to start recycling. And I started actually taking my recycled newspaper to the recycling center. But I think that, and if everybody probably checks himself, I know Brilla shared with us her history and how she was involved with her family. And I think all of us have some kernel of recycling in our history one way or the other. And then also, I think what happened is we made it a commitment, I think, to ourselves personally, first and foremost, because I really believe that is the way to actually organize and to lead in whatever you're interested in. What we did here in Knoxville, we started an organization called Project 2000 Inc. We actually started the organization to start a grocery store. We looked at 2,000 people at $500 a piece being $1 million, because at that time it wasn't called a food desert. It was just insufficient food throughout the community in various grocery stores. They hadn't given it a title like they have now. However, it was something important. So Project 2000 put together the concept. We started talking with people. We had a board of directors, which we still have. And out of that concept, we actually never were able to develop the grocery store in and of itself, primarily because the things that were needed was a prospectus and some of the technical kind of things. And we were community people who had concern, and the Most High give us ideas, and we go out with the ideas and pray that we work together to put together a group of people who have various ideas. So we still have aspirations to do that. But in the meantime, the nonprofit that was put together was so concisely done with the attorney that we worked with, young African-American attorney here in Knoxville, that we were able to branch off into other things. So we started actually getting land that was available that the people wanted to give away or sell to various other people. They sold it to us for $1. So we were able to get people in the houses through our Project 2000 idea, working with Habitat for Humanities and other organizations in the very beginning. And then I was sitting on my porch one day and I looked over at the dumpster. I lived at that time across the street from public housing in a real nice old stone house that I actually lived in for a while. At that time, they had a thing called a Homestead Act. And if you saw some property that nobody was in, you could move in that property. And then you called the people who own them and told them that you was in the property, you want to make it better. So they would work with you to buy that property. So I saw this old stone house. I said, the house just needs love. I moved into it, started loving the house, and ended up having a very beautiful life in that particular house. But as I was telling the story, I was sitting on the porch, rocking in my rocking chair, looking at the Great Smoky Mountains. And the dumpster, I looked at the dumpster all the time. And at this particular time, and I tell this story the same way, I saw the plastic falling out of the dump in slow motion. And I said, when God wants you to see something, you're not going to miss it. There's nowhere in the world you can miss it. So from that time, I started talking to other people about organizing recycling in public housing. And from my information, if Project 2000 wasn't the first organization, we were one of the first three. But I claim that we're the first organization that actually started recycling in public housing. And it wasn't as difficult as people may think, because I have been and still do. I sell incense and I sell oil, and I go door to door. So for about 20 years, I was going to door, knocking on the doors from the first of the month to about the 15th of the month, selling incense. So I already knew a lot of the people in the area. I lived in public housing myself. When my mom went to Mahari Medical School, we lived in the public housing area in Knoxville. So I had some vibe of what public housing is truly like. And so, we knew that there would be a public housing administration amongst the residents. There is a president, a vice president, a secretary, a sergeant at arms, a chaplain, where every month this organization meets. So what we decided to do was ask to be in one of the meetings with the public housing, which was across the street. It was called College Homes. It was named for Knoxville College, which was right across the street as well. So we went to the community meeting. We didn't go in thinking that we knew everything or trying to teach somebody something. We went in asking, were the citizens interested in knowing more about recycling? And there was some interest. So we asked them, would they be willing to be trained, to be ambassadors in the recycling program? And we were able to pay them at that time. Minimum wage was $5.25 an hour. This was in '89. We were able to start out paying them $7 an hour with an understanding they would go to $10 an hour as soon as they finished the training. So with that concept and that ability to do that, we started in College Homes Public Housing. We were able to get ambassadors to go door to door on a regular basis, telling the residents about the value, responsibility, and economics of recycling, and also to talk about solid waste issues. We use language that would cause people to really kind of think a little bit. I mean, ambassador, you have to know what that is, what it does. You hear the term maybe on a national level, international level, but if you're called an ambassador, what does that mean? What do you have to know? What do you have to give? And so we use that term in order for people to open the brain. We always feel like the brain needs a little stimulation, and just with a little bit of stimulation, it starts popping with the various kinds of ways that you can think about things. And so then we also, as I said, talked about solid waste issues. We didn't talk about trash and garbage. We did later. We talked about recycling, but the term was solid waste issues. So that meant, well, what is solid waste? I never thought about it. So long story short, in terms of this recycling initial piece in College Homes, we were able to get 85% of the residents in this one particular public housing to recycle. So we just duplicated it. But what we knew would happen was that if we made it exciting, if we had a recycle fair at that time, public housing, there was always a court in the middle of public housing where everybody could come together. And at that court, there usually was swings, sliding boards, and various other play apparatuses that the young people played with. So we decided to have a recycle conference right in the middle of public housing. We brought jazz, we bought pony rides, we bought balloons, we bought all the things that you know about are the good things to market or to sell or to promote what you do. the thing that I think that made it successful for us is that as an organization, we eagerly collaborated with the public housing residents, the people who live in public housing, the people who organize public housing in terms of various things that they did. We were sure that we were not just the ones on the microphone all the time. We were not the ones that were giving the message all the time. We were the ones who shared our knowledge with the public housing residents, and they in turn repeated that information and became very, very involved in public housing. We went forward to organize all the public housing in the city of Knoxville. We were able to get 85% of the people, as we started early, that was in the first public housing. We got able to get 85% in all public housing. The exciting thing that happened when we went to the second public housing, at that time we had a 3/4 ton truck with a trailer on the back. The trailer had 55-gallon barrels to put the glass in. It had a wire container on top to put the plastic in. And then we also had one of the barrels that we put glass and also newspaper. But what happened when we went to the next public housing, we had an idea that if we really made it exciting in college homes, then people who had relatives in other public housing would call that relative and say, I bet you don't know what we have in our public housing. We have recycling, and then I also knew that people had cable and they were looking at national, international things. So there was information coming in that may not on a regular basis be coming in. So when we got to the next public housing, which was called the Lonsdale community, people were running to our truck to get the recycle bin. We did not have to go to any doors. We came into the community. Somebody said, here they come. We parked the truck and people just ran to the truck. And so we had a very beautiful experience with public housing recycling, which brings to mind the underserved part that we're talking about in terms of African-American community or other communities who are underserved. It is our responsibility and our charge to make that not a thing, that we bring to the community the things that the community needs, because we're the ones who are probably at the leadership position or in the knowledge position. So it's our responsibility to bring those things to the community. And in the time that we started in '89, so it's like 32 years plus that we've been recycling, we still see how the blocks are put up in various places or attempted to be put up to keep this from going on. My analysis, I have several concepts that I think about or figure out, but the main one is wealth. That this business, this industry, we talked about it in terms of numbers earlier, this billion here and that bit, but actually I've done some research. I work with some people out of Atlanta. We do quite a bit of work on this topic. It's a $32 trillion industry. That's what this is. So we're talking, talking quote unquote, one of the board members for our organization and our board president, he was in the industry a long time, and he always talked about trash is big money, and so it is. There's no doubt about it. It is gigantic, and so we really have to, synergize the ones of us that's on this panel, the one that's on this particular call, to see how we can, after we get through with this, maybe tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, how do we ensure that these resources that's coming through this new program that's coming that the president just signed it today, the infrastructure and all the rest, the Build Back Better and all the rest, how do we ensure that we surround those resources in a way that we actually are able to use them? I'll diverge here a minute. What we saw in working with public housing, recycling, and other activities in the city of Knoxville was that the culture politically was hampering everything. So we actually started a political movement to assist what we're doing. Knoxville City Council is 9 members. We have 2 members on City Council that's part of our team. So now the discussion about recycling is different. The discussion about sustainability is different, and other issues as well. Well, how do we get the resources? Because we just got the COVID money. It was difficult for us to get that from the community into the community. So we are at a dynamic time in terms of resources. We just have to, organize ourselves in a fashion that we're able actually to make these things happen. I'll return back to the recycling. When we started in 1989, from 1989 to 1996, we had 56 people hired to do the work that I'm talking about. We had 24 hired with our organization, specifically Project 2000. They were staff people driving the trucks, picking up the recyclables. They were the ambassadors in public housing that I mentioned earlier. We had a group of young guys called Recycle Rappers. They made up rap songs about recycling. So we traveled throughout the United States talking about recycling using rap, a form of communication that some people feel that has espoused, negativeness and decadentiveness. However, these young people were able to take recycling, rap music, and use it to organize young people around recycling. We were also able to get with the Nassau College, who had students there who were on work study, to actually come and work with us on recycling, both on campus at Nassau College and also off the college. At that time in North Carolina, they had just invented a machine or either redesigned a machine that would granulize and granulate the PET plastic, which is the number one plastic. Instead of you taking something out of it, you took the PET container, put it in the machine, and the machine would granulate it. Then the bag would catch all the granulations. You would sell that bag, however many pounds it was, back to the Plastic Association at that time, which was located in North Carolina. So we were able to, get that contract with them. We had 4 of those machines. We had one at Nassau College. We had one at one of the shopping centers. We had one at the African-American, predominantly African-American high school, and one in the major shopping centers. So people would learn something about recycling. They could actually bring their PET plastic to that location, teach themselves and their children how that worked. And we also always had somebody there to share that information. So we were able to generate, and I mentioned the Tennessee Valley Authority, which is known by the acronym TVA. The Tennessee Valley Authority initially had people working with us to get the data. So we have quite a bit of information on green glass, clear glass, brown glass, weights, various items, how much aluminum, how much tin, on and on and on, quite a bit of data. But what happened was that this concept was able to keep those people hired because TVA was getting ready to have a reduction in force. So around this particular group of people, there were 14 of them that was working with us, people were being laid off. But this group of people stayed right with us, through that whole time, developing, the data and information that was going forward. After we really solidified what we were doing in public housing recycling, I went to Nashville and met the young lady, Abdul-Ahad Robinson, who was the keynote speaker for the Tennessee Recycling Coalition. And so when we came in 4 African-Americans strong. And Abdul-Ahad was on the stage, and so she looked back in the back and she saw us coming in the door. She finished her presentation. She came directly back to us and said, "Who are you and where are y'all from?" She said, "We don't usually have 4 African-Americans coming together in this conference like this. Who are you and where are you from?" So we definitely identified ourselves, and Abdul has been someone we love dearly and have worked with on many occasions. And one of the occasions was the second place we took public housing recycling to was Durham, North Carolina. We took it to Fayetteville Public Housing, and Abdul talked about 92% success rate, both in Durham and throughout the city. And so we were able to work that. And then we actually went from there to Washington, D.C., and put the public housing recycling concept in Washington, D.C. So we took it to 2 places. I got elected to the National Recycling Coalition's Board of Directors. And through that, we took it to 35 cities to the US, throughout the US and Puerto Rico. So now that's what we're looking at now, revisiting the recycling idea. When I was sitting on my porch and I saw this plastic falling out, I knew absolutely nothing about recycling other than what I saw on the television program on PBS. I love PBS. So, but we, now we're 30 years into it. We have this group that we have today. We have other groups that are going forward. We have the Ohio Recycling Coalition, which is an amalgamation of geniuses, of committed people who are funny. I mean, Arlie is a comedian. Arlie, when he talks to us, we should record some of that and put it on the tape. But he keeps these entertains us while he's educating us, and that's what happens. So that's what we're looking at, revisiting the idea about public housing recycling. We're excited to go forward and look and do some things locally and throughout the nation. We have a three-prong program that we look at. We talk about a zero waste neighborhood. A zero waste neighborhood is where human development, environmental stewardship, and sustainable economics work hand in hand. And we added this part, where no life is wasted, where no life is wasted. And so what we say is, if you're in a situation, don't stay in that situation without talking to somebody. Don't think you're by yourself. You're not. You're not by yourself. But if you don't share what's going on with you to other people, you can't get the help that you need. So as we talk about recycling of plastic, glass, aluminum, newspaper, and tin, we talk about education issues. We talk about violence issues. And we do it in a way where it's not like dogmatic or it's not belittling. It's just part of the love and part of the life that we're developing as it relates to going forward with this recycling. The second thing we have, and so what we do with the zero waste neighborhood actually came out of the public housing concept, because in public housing, you can get a lot of data and information. It's confined. A lot of people look at places and see the negative part in it. We always look at it and see the silver lining. What is it that is there to make it better for not only what we're doing, but for other things. So we extrapolated from public housing, because that's where we initially started developing what was happening. For sure, the city actually started contracting with us to do science. As Arilla mentioned earlier about her recycling experience about curbside recycling, we actually got a contract with the city. We had been doing recycling 10 or 15 years before the city actually had a curbside program. When it started the curbside program, they hired us to do, quote unquote, the underserved community. Now, in Knoxville, just like in the United States, only about 30 to 40% of the people recycle. So it would seem like everybody's underserved in reality, in terms of the knowledge you need to know and the commitment you need to make to recycling. But they were talking about the African-American community. So we went in right away. Now, in this particular occasion, the city wanted to put out 20,000 recycle bins. We got 30,000 people who wanted to do it. They told us to stop, please. We don't have but 20,000 bins. You got 30,000 people wanting 20,000 bins. We have a problem. I said, it's not a problem. We just need to get more bins. I mean, it's not a problem. So that's what we're here for. When a person has a misunderstanding about something based on their reality, not based on your reality, on their reality, it's a problem. What is an opportunity. So there's two different things. We just have to, but we have to speak up. That's the issue. Sometimes we don't speak up. We go back home and we say, you know what I should have said. Anybody ever say that? Anybody on this panel ever say that? You know what I should have said.
After every argument.
I know, that's right. So that's it. So we just have to speak up. We have to say it, because that is our job. That's why we're here doing what we do. We filling in the gap. And if we don't fill in the gap, it's still going to be a gap, and it's going to get bigger. And it's going to get bigger and bigger. So we have an opportunity for sure, with the kind of skill and knowledge that we have on this panel here, and the kind of resources that the president has got to cut and loose up to now it's been about 6 trillion. And we talking about $1 trillion a day and maybe $1 trillion tomorrow. And he's been in office like 9 months. That's a lot of money. I mean, really. So we just have to find out, or not find out. We got some examples earlier how it's going to come about. How do we organize ourselves to be sure that make it happen? So the zero waste neighborhood is the public housing is the birth of the zero waste neighborhoods for us, not the zero waste idea. We just talked to one of the originators of the zero waste idea, but the neighborhood part. Because what happened was I started trying to work on having a zero waste room. Just a room in my house, zero, and that's the issue. That shows you how much work you have to do, at least for me personally. Just a room now, zero waste room. I got one at my house. I'm working on it. But the other thing is having a youth aluminum can recycling company. We investigated aluminum cans and how many go into the landfill, and it is ridiculous. I mean, it is ridiculous how much aluminum. And aluminum is the highest value on the recycling scale. It's safe because you can't cut yourself. It doesn't have a lot of weight. So that's what we're developing, a youth aluminum can recycling company. That company, what we do is we would get with local organizations, work with Project 2000 to select youth to write the business plan, own, manage, and operate the company. So that's what we're working on, developing that. So if you're interested, you know how to get in touch with me. I'll leave my telephone number like everyone else has done, email and all the rest, so you can get in touch. So that youth aluminum can recycling company will be set up in the different cities where we go to, because in nationwide and statewide, recycling cans are tremendous in terms of the value, and then also the fact that if we started like what we talked, the material recovery facility is what we talked about when we say MRF. We can have a mini MRF. We can have just a material recovery facility that just deals with three. We could go to 3 items. Aluminum would be one, PET plastic would be the other, and paper and cardboard would be the third. And because Project 2000 has worked to the degree that we have end users, we have people who want to buy all of that stuff. So we actually have people. We have Novalis, which is the aluminum company, the biggest one in the world, pretty much. It's out of Atlanta. We have Alco Aluminum, which is like 9 miles to 15 miles from where I live here in Knoxville. So we have those companies. We have the PET companies, and well, there are a couple of companies in Georgia that make a carpet out of the PET. I have a letter from them saying they'd buy all the PET we have. So we have end users for those products. However, when Arlie and I talked maybe a year or so ago, whenever China started talking about they wasn't taking things, Arlie and I did high fives for real, because that means we have to do the work. We have to make the manufacturing, we have to talk to HBCUs. It's now that, HBCU is very popular now, where, but anyway, the brain thrust, people were talking about going out of space. When they started talking about it, they put brains behind it, and they put money behind it. So how are we going to put brains behind and money behind the looking at how we develop in areas where the Rust Belt or whatever they may call it, how is that now placed to make something, some bricks out of plastic to build houses, whatever it may be. There's a lot of innovation going on, and we can be part of that innovation. So the first thing was the zero waste neighborhood. The second thing is the youth aluminum can recycling company. And the third thing, in terms of sustainability in economic terms, is an I Recycle license plate. It's a specialty license plate that has I Recycle on it. In the state of Tennessee, the way that works is that 50% of the money that you get off the plate comes back to you. For instance, in the state of Tennessee, you have to either get somebody to sponsor 1,000 plates, or either you sell 1,000 plates at $35 a plate. That's $35,000. You send $35,000 down to the state transportation people. They look at the list of people that you have to be sure that they have a current tag on their automobile. If they do, out of the 35,000, they take 3,000 to manufacture the tag, which means 32,000. They send you $16,000 back. So you get half of that money. The number one license plate, specialty license plate in the state of Tennessee, is the Great Smoky Mountains license plate. They make $400,000 every year off their license plate. So that's what we want to do. That's our whole concept pretty much, is looking at how we can have a zero waste neighborhood. In that zero waste neighborhood, have a youth aluminum can recycling company. And to sustain us going forward, we sell license plates henceforth, now and forever, to anybody who want to buy a license plate, both in Tennessee. We do have a mock-up for Ohio already. We have a mock-up for North Carolina. We have one for Pennsylvania, and we do have one for Georgia. So that's pretty much what it is. I'm excited about what's happening in various places. For sure, Linden, Arlie told me about Linden because he told me they lived in Linden for a while and how excited he was about what was going on. I think I did talk with Andrea, maybe on one of the calls we had before the Ohio Recycling Coalition. I think she made a presentation at that time. But anybody who's on this call, who's interested in developing the recycling and public housing. We've already sent a letter to Secretary Fudge. Secretary Marshall Fudge is the new HUD director. The way we couched the letter was that recycling is a way to develop a wealth in the African-American community and also to save taxpayers money. And that last part was to be sure that we had a way to come back any way we needed to as far as saving taxpayers money, because that is something that most departments are supposed to do. They're supposed to find out how to use money in the right fashion and also save taxpayers money. I did get a letter back from her through our state HUD or city HUD in its office here, in Knoxville. Because long story short, again, we are working to develop, to revisit and to develop a working relationship with the local public housing, with the public housing in Cleveland, Tennessee, and Nashville, and virtually at some point throughout the state of Tennessee. So that's where we are. I'll definitely entertain any questions that anybody has, and I'm available to assist in anything that I do have a pickup truck. So, I'm able to assist in anything you might need. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from anyone? Anybody have any questions?
That was awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Tia.
Well, I'll tell you one thing about Umoja. When he says he's going to do something,
He does it.
he does it. Mr. Lawson's on. How you doing, Mr. Lawson?
I'm doing just fine, Mr. Owens.
All right. Dr. Robert Lawson, I stand corrected. We're just concluding with Umoja, and we're asking for any questions. Umoja has, we have met here in Dublin, and we've talked about a lot of things, especially the license plate. And like anything else, with COVID, we had to sort of stand down for a little bit, but we're going to crank it back up and we're going to get things going. And based on who I see on this call, there's a good supply of talent, and not only talent, but motivation to do some right things. And now with that infrastructure money, hopefully there's going to be some funds that we can do some things. And I really like what Umoja's talking about, working with the youth and the recycling centers and so forth. And flipping right back real quickly to what not only Linden needs, but a lot of communities need. There needs to be in every state a civilian conservation corps. It was created way back under President Roosevelt Franklin. And believe it or not, my father was one of the first young men that were recruited. And I had no idea that one day in the future, I would also be involved in CCC. Now, what this simply means is that it's a work, earn, learn program. And I'd like to push that with our governor and the person that's over the Department of Natural Resources right now. But I was a supervisor. I supervised a crew of anywhere from 10 to 20 young adults in that same age group that Angela talked about regarding all the gunshots and all that good stuff. And I'll tell you, every now and then I meet one of those guys or one of those girls, and they said, Arlie, if it wasn't for CCC, I'd be either dead or in prison. And that needs to happen again. I know there's AmeriCorps Youth Corps, but this is something that is totally different. Those young men learn how to operate heavy equipment. Umoja talked about a truck. They drove dump trucks, you name it. They could do everything. Hand tools. We used to do clear cuts, stream modifications. We did everything. I learned how to operate a John Deere 450 bulldozer. And in my infinite wisdom, I asked my supervisor, where should I put these stumps that we had pulled? He said, well, dig a hole and bury them. So I dug a hole, all right next to the river. and while I was pushing back and forth, all of a sudden, I was underwater up to my neck. But I did learn a lesson. I learned you don't dig a hole next to a river. But anyway, folks out there working with youth and working to better the environment, it's the right thing to do. It goes back to what I just said earlier, the power of one.